kailangan din na bandang. Education is key to success. We haven't taught our parents. Yeah. Each one have to teach one. Must bomb the one. We haven't taught us. Each one got to teach one. Let's learn from one another. Let's go.
Don't just think about now, the present. You should think about the future.
I can control the way I do things.
My actions shouldn't define me.
You can be the best that you want to be, and don't let anyone underestimate your abilities.
Hello, I'm Khalil Osiris. Welcome to Each One Teach One. This is an episode about how our choices shape the circumstances of our lives. We are at Princess High School talking with youth about the real-life consequences of decisions they make on a daily basis and the impact these decisions may have for years to come.
The decision I've made that has led me into a bad situation, not working hard enough to pass within this year.
One of my bad choices was smoking at the early age. It was a negative influence, and yeah, it built up to a habit.
Choosing the course I chose, Definitely, yes.
I chose the wrong friends or wrong people who actually showed me nothing, who showed me the wrong way and the wrong path.
When I'm with my friends, there are some choices that you have to choose, is this good or bad? So I have to go with the flow. Then at the end of the day, you realize, oh man, that was a bad choice.
What today's conversation is about is something more than you as a learner. In fact, my conversation with you today is going to be way beyond your role as simply a learner. Because I think that you have to start preparing for life. You must start right now, 11th grade, you must start thinking like an adult. Because the decisions you're making will have adult consequences. So if everyone continues to engage you as children, and you continue to think like a child, and your decisions that follow that are childlike, they will never grow you into your best. I want to have a conversation with you that respects your genius. A conversation that says to you, I believe you're greater than you appear to be in this moment. And the reason I know that is because I've had a similar journey. By the time I was in 11th grade, I had become politically active. I had gotten involved with a lot of very angry kinds of choices because I was an angry young man. See, I had done well in school academically. I knew how to play the game. And it wasn't that I was so clever, it's just that I had a great memory. So memorization came easy for me. I could go to class, study the text, get a good passing grade. And in the courses that I liked, well, I did a little bit more and got a better grade. But on the whole, I was content with being just average or mediocre in school. Though I knew I had the potential to be much more. It was a very difficult time in America, though. It was what we called the civil rights movement and a whole lot of other struggles politically that were happening. And I was one of those young kids that was excited by it. My excitement turned to anger in trying to figure out what role I could play, what I could do, what contribution I would make. That anger turned into delinquency. And by the age of 17, I had committed a robbery and was on my way to prison. 17. I'm telling you how close you are to making decisions that have adult consequences. I served 5 years for that choice to commit that robbery. And so in that environment where I had made choices that led to my own imprisonment, I became worse in that environment. Imagine this. Imagine something happens to you that's so bad that it feels like it's destroyed you, and in it you become worse. I bring it up to you because I want to give you some context for our conversation today about the power of your choices and the power you have to define who you will become. A power greater than anything else somebody else tells you you are. I became worse because I started thinking like a criminal. I got out, and what do you think I did once I got out of prison? Back to crime. Only worse. I was arrested again, and this time when I went to prison, the judge looked at me, he said, young man, my only regret is I cannot give you more time. And he gave me a sentence of 15 to 75 years. In other words, I would die there if I did not make better decisions. And what I didn't tell you is I was a teenage father. I had a son before I went to prison the first time. And when I got out, I had another son. Oh, you need to stop. I'm saying that because some of you boys, you young men in the room, you don't even know how close you are to being a father. One choice away. One choice away. That's it. One. And you know you are ill prepared. You are as ill prepared today as I was back then. See, I got my parent hat on now, but I'm looking at myself through the lens of the child I had become, the young person I had become because of my choices. But here I was, that was the situation I was faced with. And now I've left two sons without a father. See, they didn't deserve to grow up without me. They didn't deserve to have a situation where he goes to school, they go to school, and at every turn when there's a basketball game, a football game, any important event for them, I cannot be there. I was the one who wounded them. And some of you young people, you've been wounded by your parents. And it hasn't just been because they weren't there. Some of it's been because of even the way they talk to you. The mean things that are said to you. The things that you are now carrying in your heart, carrying in your minds, that diminish your ability to be well because it has been so hurtful to you. I know that. I can see it. I know that because I can feel it. I know when I'm in the presence of people who have been wounded, because I have been both wounded and someone who's done it. And when you take responsibility for that, you become a different person. I'm having a conversation with you about how to change and raise and transform the level of your thinking. Because it's your thinking that's going to define what you become.
Let's learn from one another. Let's go.
Welcome back. Now that we know how choices lead to consequences, we explore the idea that teaching our children how to think goes far beyond teaching them what to think.
My thoughts do control my behavior because most of the times how you behave is something that subconsciously happens in your mind.
I think what I think is what I plan to do. So obviously my thoughts are a pre-plan of what I'm going to do.
I think my thoughts are to myself, it's more private, and my behavior is more linked to the people I'm around.
Why would you develop a habit of thinking that produces a habit of behavior that, in fact, makes you worse than better? Let me give it to you this way. The only way to control your behavior is to control your thinking. But you are not taught to control your thinking. You're taught what to think. You get to class, as long as you know what to think, you'll do well. And you follow instructions. There's a point at which you're going to have to learn how to think. And that's a bit more complicated, it's a bit more complex. Because when you learn how to think, it means that your reasons for behaving the way that you do are determined by what you believe and what you value. In professional literature, we call that internal locus of control. That means there's something inside you that you have that makes you responsible for what you think, feel, and do. And the more you learn how to think, the less you need to be told what to think. Imagine that. So that when you learn how to think, it means that you learn how to think in ways that serve you. that expand you, that grow you, that nurture you, that lifts and builds you up rather than puts you down. That's how you know when you're thinking in ways that are reflective of your genius. And when you're not doing that, you'll know that too. You will know instantly. If you have a thought that is against your better nature, against your genius, you don't have to struggle with it. And if you don't believe it, test it. There's all kinds of ways you can test your ideas to find out if they're effective. Here's what I'm telling you though. Some of you, you don't have to go out there and burn your hand in the streets doing something stupid before you realize it's not the thing for you. It's like the guy, you're the littlest one on the team. We know you got the biggest heart, but you don't have to go out there and get beat up just because you want to prove you got a big heart. You see, when you hear of people bunking and doing all kinds of other things, think about this. Why does a person bunk? It's because it's what they're thinking about doing. If you think like a dummy, you'll act like a dummy. So what am I saying? It's an empty thought. It's a thought beneath what your genius and potential is. I want you to think maturely. I want you to think about your power greater than what it looks like right now. I want you to imagine that things you're doing today have consequences tomorrow. And that you can actually be your best. I went to prison that second time. I decided to turn my life around. I went on and earned my bachelor's and master's degree while I was in prison. Did everything I could possibly do to turn my life around. Wrote manuscripts for books, created programs, began to write my own sons and become close with them. I mean, it was something that I discovered I could do that I didn't even do when I was free. And then I realized when I was there that actually I had been in prison long before I was ever arrested. Imagine that. Imagine that before you crash, there's signs telling you you're about to crash. Imagine that before you make a really, really stupid choice, there's signs along the way saying, don't go that way. And you ignore all of them and you end up there. That's what I realized about my life. And so I knew I could change it. Because I was at a very low place in my life where I had done all the horrible things that I could do to get there. The choices I told you about that I made that landed me there. See, I'm not blaming anybody for my being in prison. This is what you need to understand. Those were my choices. And some of you, you'll know when you have begun to think like an adult because what you'll start doing is taking responsibility for your choices. That's the thing that would distinguish your childhood from your adulthood. It's when you begin to take responsibility, and not just for your choices, even for the way you feel and the way you think and the way you speak. I looked at my life for what it was, and I recognized that the person who had created it was me. I recognized that the greatest limitations I had in my life was the ones I created for myself. It's called self-imposed limitations. And therefore, I was responsible for changing them. I want you to be better than you imagine you are right now. I want you to be bigger than your circumstances. I want you to think about what's coming down the line because guess what? You're creating it. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? I'm talking at that depth. There's a wonderful author by the name of Gibran, and he says, we create our joys and sorrows long before we experience them. What are you creating in your life? What are you taking responsibility for creating? Can you create your joy? Is your happiness accessible? I actually believe it is. You always have access to something that makes you happy. And rather than depending on someone else to direct your thinking there, you have a responsibility to direct your thinking there for yourself. See, I'm not so much interested in you being better learners as I am you being better human beings. And I know that when you become better human beings, you'll be better learners, you'll be better scientists, you'll be better journalists, you'll be better everything. I don't want you to believe the lies that you've been told about who you are that's less than what you're capable of. I want you to be reminded of your genius. I want you to be reminded of something you were born with that maybe hasn't even been spoken into your life yet.
The one thing that I would change about myself from what I've learned is the way I think and how I actually relate into certain situations and how I look at everything.
Don't just think about now the present, you should think about the future.
I can control the way I do things by just being in the right mindset.
My actions shouldn't define me by them in a way of destroying me, but from them I should build myself up.
You can be the best that you want to be, and don't let anyone underestimate your abilities.
Let's learn from one another. Let's go.
In the same way that thinking shapes behavior, emotions shape how we feel about ourselves and even how we treat others. Your thoughts have the power to create emotions ranging from joy to compassion to depression. It's important to help young people understand that they're not only responsible for their actions, they're also responsible for how they treat other people, which often reflects how they feel about themselves.
I can control my emotions depending on the situation that I'm encountering.
I don't think I can control the way I feel. Like, whatever happens, a situation happens, I can't control what happens to me, so I don't think so. Hey.
Myself? Directly? I can control my emotions. I'm sure quite a few people can too.
Yes, I can. I can control my emotions. I'm very calm, collected, and cool.
Well, yeah, sometimes I can, but there's this time when you have rage. Rage sometimes just takes control, then like you lose control.
You always have access to your joy. You always have access to something that makes you happy. And rather than depending on someone else to direct your thinking there, you have a responsibility to direct your thinking there for yourself. Do you understand what I'm saying? At any time in your life, when you're not feeling good, you're not feeling happy and joyful, change the direction of your thinking. Because if you keep your thinking on something that looks stupid, you're going to keep feeling stupid. If you keep your thinking in the direction of something that's sad, you're going to keep feeling sad. In order to change that, change the direction of your thinking. See, I was one of those who, I had a mother who cared, a father who was there, knew both of them, had every opportunity to succeed. They gave me everything they could within their means, and guess what? I was that rebellious child. I was that one that didn't want to listen. As close as I was to my mother, guess what? I wounded her. I hurt her more than anybody on the planet could. And when I went to prison, which she told me probably would happen, and I resented her for saying it. And I got there, she said, son, let me just say this to you. I cannot bear to walk into a prison and see the son that I gave birth to living like a dog. Imagine how many parents feel wounded and disappointed about the decisions and choices you're making, about some of the things you have done that you could do better. And see, sometimes when I tell you about the choices you make, the consequences that result from those choices, and then you look at yourself and you wonder, you wish you had an opportunity to do something differently. I got out of prison. Guess what? I was 40 years old by the time I got out. I had served 20 years in prison. 13 months later, my father died. 2 months after that, my mother had a stroke. I went to the hospital to visit her, went to get her some water, and she completely passed. I didn't have the money to bury them. I had already cremated my father. I didn't have the money to bury my mother. I cremated her. I carried the urn of their ashes in the boot of my car for almost a year because emotionally, I did not know what to do with it. And so for that time that I carried those urns, eventually I came to make peace with not only the fact that they had passed, but that I could release myself from feeling guilty about what I hadn't done as the son that they had given birth to. And I've committed my life to living the rest of my days doing that, being an example, being a role model, doing my best where I can, helping someone else along the way. If you're feeling depressed, because you know some of you walk around, I'm just so depressed.
When I'm sad, I listen to music, talk to my friends, and they try and lift up my spirit.
Usually it's with music, yes, and movies, of course, yeah.
Then sometimes you can listen to music, you know, music takes things off your mind, the things that make you sad, so yeah.
I usually don't tell people why I'm sad. My brother shouts at me about it all the time, so I usually just sleep. Yeah, I sleep when I'm sad, and hopefully wake up happy. If I don't, then I wake up and I'll try to sleep again. Hopefully that'll go away.
If you're not careful and you keep thinking depressed thoughts, you will find yourself over a period of time thinking about suicide. Why am I saying that? Because we know the progression in the thinking. Chronic depression leads to those kinds of thoughts. So I'm laughing, we're saying it lightly, but I'm telling you what actually happens from a clinical standpoint. So if you have a friend that's constantly sad, or if you constantly feel depressed, you need to make the time to talk to someone that will help you move in a different direction. And I say that because some of you, some of you are the ones who will actually be able to help someone else. And you don't even know it. You don't even know that the thing that has made you most, I'm talking about pained in your life, is the thing that's the lesson that you have to give to someone else. I'm gonna close with this thought. It's a very simple thought. The responsibility of the teacher is to make the education accessible to you. The responsibility of the learner is to rise to the occasion with a willingness to learn. The responsibility of the parent is to be the first and most lasting teacher for their child. So before you even get to a classroom, there should be a parent in your life teaching you. And if it's not happening, guess what? You need to take that role seriously for yourself and do something more for you.
What Prof was generally saying to us was that it's not where you come from, but it's where you're going. So I really believe that today's motivational talk was to remind us that the past has gone and it's time to make a decision, change our thinking, change our way of doing things in order to obtain what we want later on in life.
In closing, I want to leave you with one thought. You have the power to make good choices. I hope you'll use it wisely. I'm Khalil Osiris. This is Each One Teach One. And until we meet again next week, stay in the light.